Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's special guest is widely considered to be the foremost psychic medium in the world. For 37 years, he's brought insight, healing, and peace of mind to thousands of people who were able to connect and communicate with departed loved ones thanks to his unique and powerful psychic abilities. He's a best-selling author of many books, including One Last Time, Afterlife, Final Beginnings, Crossing Over, the Stories Behind the Stories, Infinite Quest, Practical Praying, Fallen Masters, and of course, What If God Were the Sun, which was also made into a TV movie. He hosted his own hugely successful, internationally syndicated TV shows, Crossing Over with John Edward and John Edward Cross Country. He's also appeared on many TV shows, including Larry King Live, Oprah, 2020, The View, Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, Anderson Cooper, and dozens more, including the critically acclaimed HBO special, Life After Life. He's been featured in every major newspaper and magazine, and in 2002, he was named one of People magazine's most intriguing people of the year. His uncanny ability to predict future events and his incredible accuracy and down-to-earth approach have earned him a vast and loyal following. In fact, so far he's sold over 2.4 million books worldwide. In 2007, he launched a digital network to deliver real-time content internationally, culminating in the creation of the online community known as Evolve. He also tours extensively around the world, making personal appearances, giving lectures, readings, and spreading his message that grief, healing, and hope are eternally intertwined because our loved ones never cease to love us and they never really die. He teaches us that we can all connect with our spirit guides and identify the psychic energy around us on deeper levels. I'm delighted to welcome John Edward to our show. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Wow, thank you. And thank you for that introduction. I feel like I should go take a nap now. That was a lot.
Well, you deserve it. You've done a lot. And I'm sure by now everyone knows that you started developing your psychic abilities after meeting the world-renowned psychic Lydia Clark, who recognized your abilities and predicted that you would become a renowned psychic yourself. You were only 15 when you met her. What made you go and see her in the first place?
So my mom's side of the family had always had psychics come to the house. They had always done card readers, psychics, seance stuff. They were very, very into anything psychic related. My dad was a New York City police officer and a career military guy, not a fan of the subject matter, and had always requested that his son be kept away from all that stuff. And my mom did. She kept me shunned from it. Like I was always away. We're not part of it. Long story short, they wound up separating and divorcing. We wound up moving into my grandmother's house. And when we moved into my grandmother's house, that kind of was where all this stuff had happened. And they would do stuff like once every 3 or 4 months, they'd have somebody come and think like a Tupperware party. Instead of Tupperware, they'd have a card reader, a psychic, a seance. So they were very well vested in having people come, nothing new for them. But when Lydia wound up at my grandmother's house doing readings, she was different. I had always made fun of the people that came out of the room. Like when they went for a reading, I would be the sarcastic, skeptical, kid who was being like, let me guess. She said, or he said, you're going to Florida. And they would be like, yes. How'd you know that? I'm like, because you're from New York and everybody goes to Florida from New York, so I was that person. So then, my cousin went and she came down and she was like, ooh, this woman was scary. I was like, oh, come on. So I went to prove to them she wouldn't be able to read me. And that's how it happened. I went to have a reading to debunk her. And in that process, she forced me to take her seriously. Like she forced me to pay attention to what she was saying. And she was extremely accurate. And there were things that she said that she could not have known. There were things that I would have had to have told her. So initially I thought, well, maybe she's a mind reader. Maybe she read my mind or something. Cool. And then things happened within a very short period of time after that. And I'm a very logical, analytical person. And I'm like, you can't read somebody's mind when the information's not there and it hasn't happened yet. So part of what that reading was telling me that the reason why she chose to come to my grandmother's house that day was to meet me. And she didn't normally do those types of parties, but she was told by her guides that she had to come because she had to meet me and, open the door for me to put me on my path. That's how it happened.
Well, do you think you still would have become a psychic if you had not met her?
So I said to her, probably not. And she laughed because I made a joke once and I said, look what you did. And she said, nope. She goes, you would have done this either way. Like there would have been another way the universe would have found to open that door for you. This was an easier way because it came through your mother and your grandmother. So you had like a kind of gentle entry in where it wasn't thrust upon you. She said you didn't have to have an experience that would blow the doors off of it or force you to look at it differently. So she says no, it would have happened anyway. But I'm very grateful in the way that it happened because I'm not an easy person when it comes to this work. Still to this day, all these years later, I have a need for a lot of validation, whether I'm being read or doing the reading. Matter of fact, a client not too long ago on a Zoom session, when I was doing the reading, like she was fine with the information that came through, but I was like still pushing the envelope. And she was like, "Ooh, you're like a needy medium." And I laughed and I was like, "No, I'm not needy. I just like a lot of validation."
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, you come from a family, at least on your mother's side, that was not at all disturbed by psychic phenomena.
No,
In fact, in your book, One Last Time, you described your mom as a psychic junkie,
I
but
did.
not all parents are as supportive as yours were. So, what do you say to parents whose young children are demonstrating psychic or clairvoyant abilities?
So I get this question quite a bit, and I get it from people who had no idea that I was very, very young when I started. So like I feel like after doing this for like what feels like a century already, I like people to let their kids be kids. And I think we're in a different time than when I started. We're at a time where kids are coming into this earthly classroom with like their iOS system, right? Their spiritual operating system is way more advanced and sophisticated because of maybe the astrology, the generational planets that they're born under. So they come in processing information quicker and faster. So I feel like they're coming in more psychic than the generations previously because they need to be. They need to be more sensitive. They need to be more empathetic. They need to help raise the vibration of the planet. They need to help kind of put humanity back on track. So they're coming in equipped with that. So I want parents to let their kids just be kids because they're already coming in with a higher processing. So what they need from their parents is better communication. And that's the key. The kids are going to develop their intuition in the way that they need to. But what the parents need is to up their own ability to communicate back with the child that's coming in to teach them how to communicate. So that's what I would start with. And then always the basics, like, in Infinite Quest, that book is the book that I wrote for my kids. I was like, who would put my voice in my kids' heads if I wasn't here to teach this in the way that I'd want them taught, the basics? Nobody, because nobody's me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this book for them. And that's what that book came out of. That book came from me wanting to like have this like legacy message for my children or maybe my grandchildren in case I'm not here. So that book was for them to teach the basics. And that's what I'd recommend. Learn the basics, have parents learn the basics. Keep the ego out of it. A lot of kids, when they demonstrate and they show stuff right away, the parents either want to shut it down because they're afraid or they get freaked out, or they want to nurture it to the point where it's kind of like stage mom or dad. And I'm like, if the kid's not having a fearful experience, document it, acknowledge it, keep it normal. Because if you make it too big of a deal, then the ego gets kicked in, and you don't want it to come from a place of, ego.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Your uncle Carmine's death was a pivotal event in your life because you had a vision of his death, but you weren't able to prevent it. Are there times, John, when you have a vision that enables someone to prevent a tragedy?
So his passing and my mom's passing, those two very key events in my timeline, they're like bookended events for me. Like him starting it and her ending this like little 2-year lesson was very difficult because his experience I saw and tried to stop and couldn't, and then didn't see a point. And then my mom's experience was the opposite. I didn't see anything about her cancer. I didn't see anything. Like even when the doctors told me, like I laughed. And they were like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, my mom doesn't have cancer. And they were like, what? I'm like New York. I'm kind of like one of New York's top psychics. Like if my mom had cancer, I would know. And I was so confident. Like, I mean, like not cocky, but like really confident because, by that point, I had been doing this work professionally for 4 years. I had already had binders of letters from people, handwritten letters, like binders of them, thanking me for the reading. And I found their so and so's cancer, or because of this, they were able to get something checked out, and they caught it at stage one, or they didn't know that they had a widowmaker issue and they got their whatever checked. So why wouldn't they help me? Like I was like, well, yeah, that flattened me out because the cardiothoracic surgeon told me it was the grossest malignancy he's seen in his entire 35-year career. And if they had caught it earlier, she would have had a better survival rate. Saying that to somebody who's 19 and does this work was soul crushing. It was soul crushing. So those two events are my go-to teaching moments when somebody already asked me that question. Like those are the foundational moments that I built my abilities on. And what they taught me is that we're allowed to know what we know. We're allowed to know what we're allowed to know because we're still here to learn. We're still here to evolve. And if I didn't have those two bookended experiences, it wouldn't have prepared me and helped me on my journey, questioning everything, pushing the envelope, wanting to know the potentials of what her abilities would be, where I'm concerned as I evolved and grew older and got married and had kids and would she be a part of that? Like when death happens in a family, my God, the questions that come when grief subsides, like when I say that the moment, the rawness of the grief, when that starts to subside and life kicks back in, there's a lot of questions. Like if you are like, are they around? Do they see this? Will they see that? Like I had all of them. And I think my entire trajectory was built on my search. It's like the X-Files. Like, when you look at that show, the 10 seasons of however long that show went was because they were looking for Mulder's sister, right? And that was that's like the backdrop. And then all these other stories happen. I kind of feel like that was my journey. Like that was my Mulder. Like I needed to go find her and how she would be involved or not in my journey.
Yeah, I can see that there's a certain pressure on you to be accurate. I mean, if you're doing a reading, especially in front of an audience, people are looking for validation of your skills. The doctor gives you this news about your mom, and you feel this pressure that you didn't already know. It's got to be at some level quite stressful.
Yeah, stressful. Stressful was definitely a word. I wouldn't have called it stressful back then. I would not have called it stressful. I would have called it insatiable. That's the word I would have used. I had an insatiable desire for information, like the crazy researcher looking for the cure for the disease where the ticking time clock is happening, in the movie. And by the end of the movie, the patient's going to pass and a little bit of a breakthrough happens on that researcher. That's kind of like what it felt like for me while processing a ton of anger, like a ton of anger and just anger at the process. Like how could you let that happen? Like why would you do that? Like I took it personally.
Yeah, there's a message in there, I think, about the lesson that you learned from that, which is not to be overconfident and not to always assume that you will find out everything you need to know.
Yeah. And it taught me to be able to teach that. It taught me that experience so that I could teach it to my clients. I've had so many experiences over the 4 decades now of doing this where there are moments, and I always teach from my own personal experience. I always teach from what I know. When somebody asks me a question, I tie it into something that I'm familiar with so that I'm letting them know, like, I'm not just pontificating because I've been doing this for so many years. Like, I've lived this, and let me show you here. Here's an example. Here's a past example. Here's one that just happened. And here's how I have evolved in my understanding of this. So, yeah, I like people to come on the journey.
Are there times that you receive information during a reading that you don't feel comfortable communicating to the client?
There are moments in a reading that information comes through where if I recognize what it is, sometimes I don't get the chance to recognize it. Like I say it out loud. I just like, bleh, it comes out. And then after it comes out, I'm like, ooh, I wish I would have said that differently. Like I don't feel like I almost feel like I didn't. I feel like I heard it. I didn't say it. If that makes any sense. And then there are moments where I'll see something or I'll feel something, and I should probably address for the audience like how information comes through, because a lot of people when they see psychic stuff on television now or on the internet, they think it's like TV. It's very subtle energy, and it's kind of like an energetic form of sign language. Like it's a symbolic form of if you've had a dream or a daydream, it's like an active daydream that's kind of happening in my mind. And whatever I'm seeing, hearing, and feeling, I kind of react to, and then I try to interpret without getting in the way of the authentic thing that's coming through. So, like, whatever that is, I kind of deliver. So, if I see something that's kind of private, you usually will hear me say, may I be personal? Because energetically and universally and karmically, I want to be respectful to the person and ask them, can I be personal? They give me permission, I move forward with it. If it's on a Zoom type of experience like this, there's a little chat feature on here. So I could direct message them and be like, hey, here you go. And then if they choose to reveal it to everybody else, that's on them. But if I get it, I feel like there's a reason why I'm getting it. So I feel like if I see it, hear it, feel it, my duty and job is to say it, but ethically and responsibly, not to freak a person out, not to, not to shock them, but to deliver information in a way that they're going to hear it and they're going to benefit from it. No need for shock value.
Now, I've followed your career from the very beginning. I'm a huge fan. And I know that when you're doing a reading, most people are hoping for a specific person to come through, but very often another person will come through. Why is that, John?
I think the people that need to come through come through. And I think that sometimes it has to do with the frame of reference of any medium. So if I'm reading for somebody and they just want to hear from, let's say, grandma, right? Their grandmother passed. I'll use my grandmother. She was like 93 years old when she passed. A lovely woman, phenomenal family, but had a very beautiful life and a somewhat easy passing by a lot of standards. But then I have a cousin who died tragically. So if you juxtapose those two passings, where one is a tragic passing and one is a sweet, easy passing by passing standards, which one's going to grab somebody's attention? The one that died tragically. So the bigger passings or the billboard personality will sometimes open the door first to bring the quieter, more sensitive folks through, which is why I always try to counsel anybody that's going for a reading, have an open mind, because, that high school person that you haven't thought about in 30 years, yeah, they can show up. You had a starter marriage that you want to forget. Well, guess what? Don't forget their dead relatives, because they haven't forgotten you. They'll come in a session. So I kid with my clients, not really, but I say it as a joke. I'm like, no validation to me in a reading should start with a preposition. And then you'll see the furrowed brow go like, preposition. And then I remind them what I mean by that. And I'll say, there shouldn't be a qualifying word to you validating the reality of your life. So it shouldn't be, yeah, but, or well, perhaps, maybe. You either do or you don't, right? So either you have the person who blah, blah, or you don't. So that client's emotional desire to connect with one specific person can actually get in the way of the reading. So I have to say, please be open to anybody that you're connected to and allow my process to do it. And there was a woman, she was really, really sweet. She came to a Zoom group. And when I tell you that, not intentionally, oh my God, but she was so difficult to read because she was like getting in the way of it. So I finally said to her, I go, have you ever been to a restaurant? And she said, yes. I was like, great. Tell me about your restaurant experience, or just tell me about what happens when you go into the restaurant. She goes, they seat you at the table and give you a menu. And I went, right. Did you write the menu? And she goes, no. I go, so you read what's on the menu and then you make a selection from what's on the menu, right? And she goes, yes. I said, and then the food you order kind of comes out. And maybe you order a couple of things because you want to sample it. It's a new menu. It's a new menu, a new restaurant. She's like, okay, but if it's an Italian restaurant, maybe you're hoping there's lasagna on it, but there's not lasagna. There's something else, baked ravioli, right? And she's looking at me like, where is he going with this? So we do this whole thing. I go, then your buffet of food comes out. And you're like, I like fresh mozzarella. I don't like burrata. I really wanted lasagna and there's baked ravioli, but it's not cheese. It's like chicken, veal, and spinach, right? And as you're starting to pick apart everything that's in there, and you're not eating. You're not getting the nourishment that the food is supposed to do for you because you're hungry. I said, so you might be disappointed in how it's presented to you. You might be disappointed in the ingredients or how it's made, But if you eat it, it's going to nourish you and you might enjoy it if you give it a chance. And she's looking at me. I said, would you ever at any point get up, walk into the kitchen and go to the chef and start taking seasonings and like do things? And she was like, of course not. And I was like, okay, great. Get out of my kitchen. And she looked at me and she's like, what? I go, chef, kitchen, get out of my kitchen. And that was my analogy to tell her, like, you're getting in the way. Just allow me to serve what's coming in, because you might get that entree that you're hoping for. You might get the dessert that you want, but you're too busy critiquing and getting in the way of what's actually happening. So I think if people can get out of the way of the process, and it's okay to be disappointed. I say this all the time because we have expectations of what they want to hear, of who they want to hear from. But what if you don't hear from those people? I had somebody last week at a Zoom group, and he was great. He said to me, I kept talking. During that group, I talked about people having an A list of who they want to hear from, the red carpet A-listers from the afterlife that they want. So at the end, I said, "Do you have any questions?" And he was like, "Not really." He was like, "I got to be honest with you." He goes, "I did this not as a, just no disrespect, it's not as a joke, but like I didn't have an A-lister." He goes, "I just want to kind of like watch." He was like, "I didn't believe in this." He's like, "But let me tell you, dude," he's like, "you like turned my entire belief system around." He goes, "And that was before you even got to me." He goes, "That was watching the other people." And in his example, I had to bring his wife from another room in to bring her people through because he didn't understand certain things. So it's kind of interesting if people let the process happen. And I always said, if you let your people come through, whomever they are, sometimes the person you want becomes part of that group.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I hope everyone listening understands that you've got to just let John do his thing. But I do
Or
remember
any medium. Yeah, any medium, not just me.
any medium. I remember hearing you say once that you don't enjoy doing readings for celebrities. Why not?
I put a hot, fiery passion, like with a hot, fiery passion. My personality, and the personality of somebody that's known doesn't really gel. Like I am not a person that goes like, oh my God, that's, or like, oh my God, look, oh my God, I have the opportunity to, like, I don't care. So like I will be snarky and sarcastic with Mary Smith or Wawa, like whoever the person is. You know, I'm like, I, I'm not impressed by celebrity. I've never been impressed by celebrity. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of them. And I always jokingly refer to myself as the pool boy. And my wife would be like, why do you call yourself the pool boy? I said, oh, that's easy. I was like, when they got a party happening and their pool's green, I am their best freaking friend. They want me to come make sure that pool is crystal clear and blue and perfect. I go in, and as soon as that pool is clean, it's John Who. I was like, so I already know my place. So I don't look to belong. I don't look to make friends. I don't look to connect. I recognize I have a role. My role is to be the pool boy. If in that moment that I wind up doing that, I've actually had confrontational moments with people that are celebrities, celebrity adjacent. I won't let anybody get in the way of a process. I won't let anybody get in the way of either their own process or somebody coming through. I had a gentleman that I was doing a private reading for, non-celebrity. And literally in the first 7 minutes of the reading, after I gave him the explanation, somebody who had passed by suicide came through and he interrupted me in such an abrupt way and said, well, I have no interest in connecting with him. And thankfully it was over the phone, not Zoom, because he would have saw my expression. And I tried really hard to like align my energy. And then I was like, yeah, I can't do this. And he's like, what do you mean you can't do this? I was like, let me rephrase. I don't want to do this for you. And he went, excuse me? And I was like, yeah, when someone shows disrespect to someone who's coming through for them, it kind of makes me not like my client. And it wouldn't be fair for you because now I have a bias towards you. I was like, so I'm not the right person for you. So let's not take offense. This is way too expensive. And I want to make sure that, you get the right opportunity. And I literally refunded that session on the spot and referred him to other people. So I'll recognize that I might not be the right person for certain people. And I think when we talk about like celebrity stuff, unless that celebrity can be humbled and open and nice, and with those people like that I will like be upfront and direct. And people like, you know, there are people that I have met that are exceptions to that rule that I will drop everything for and answer that call because they've been very gracious to me as a person, not as a pool boy. So when like you have like celebrities like that, those folks I would 100%. That phone rings, I will answer it no matter where I am.
Well, I think you've earned the right to be, for lack of a better word, selective and to be treated with respect, whether they're famous or they're not. Now, you've said that spirits are capable of amazing things. What are some of the things that have amazed you the most that spirits have done?
Oh, hands down, the synchronicity of how things align. I am blown away by the synchronicities that we all, by the way, whether you're read or not, like it's still happening. I just watched the process of how I feel like I'm an anthropological observer because of the work that I do. And I just kind of like am that watcher of process and patterns. So when you see how things have to like align for things to happen, I am just like, wow, because I didn't do that. I bared witness to it. So like, I'm still after all these years, like, wow. And I go back 20 years ago when I was doing Crossing Over, and there was a producer named Allison, and we were watching one of the shows that she produced. And I said something like I didn't remember the reading because I don't remember the reading. So I was like, you know, did this happen? Or I think I even called myself in the third person. I was like, did he get the name or did he get this? And I remember she like looked at me like, I don't know what's creepier, the fact that you referred to yourself in the third person or you don't remember it. She's like, you were there. I was like, listen, I know that's me. I go, but right now I'm watching somebody that looks and sounds like me. I don't remember the reading. I don't remember what happens next. I go, so I'm invested. And she was like, yeah, but she's like, you seem like you're still kind of amazed by it. And I was like, I am. And the day that I'm not, my ability should be taken from me. I think everybody who does this work should be amazed by the process. And then they should be appreciative that they have the opportunity to be a part of that process. Like I have a very strong reverence and respect for what I do, which is why I think I've been allowed to be on the scene for 4 decades.
I do too. And I was a huge fan of both of your TV shows, and your book, Crossing Over: The Stories Behind the Stories, is an eye-opening expose of the struggles you had with the producers to keep the show authentic and to reflect your personal integrity as a medium. Would you ever consider hosting another network TV show, John?
I would. And there's been talks about it for a decade, legitimately a decade. In the last few years, very, very seriously, that we're in talks with like some folks to like serious talks to do something. And I will only do it to teach. I'll only do it to kind of like, I'm not interested in ghost hunting, not doing that. I'm only interested in raising the vibration of an individual's experience. I want it to be about the person and the viewer and the understanding. I mean, we are living in some very difficult, polarizing, divisive times on this planet. So anything that I'm doing, whether it be this interview, a tweet, an Evolve episode, I always have the concept of how do I make it? How do I leave somebody better than I found them? That's been my motto since I started. I want to leave people better than I found them. That's my job.
And you do, believe me, you've helped me in so many ways and so
Oh,
many
thank you.
millions of people. And many times during your readings, John, you're conveying life lessons to us. Are there specific life lessons that our departed loved ones are particularly keen on communicating to us?
I think that we should appreciate people while they're here, communicate with people while they're here, be honest with people while we're here, express how we feel about them, because sometimes tomorrow's not promised. So it's really important. That's where like communicate, appreciate, and validate comes from. I've told this story publicly a couple of times, but after every event that I do, after every crossing over episode, I would always end it with, please take the opportunity to communicate, appreciate, and validate your loved ones and friends so a medium like myself doesn't have to do that for you. And people thought that was a phrase that I only use for TV. It's not. It's a phrase that I use in every event that I've ever done. I had seen Joan Rivers live here in Long Island at a place called Westbury Music Fair. And it was right after her husband, Edgar, had passed. She was outrageously funny. And everybody in that room knew what she had just gone through personally. And because of the energy that supported her in that room, she gave it back like 10 times. She was brilliant. She was funny. She made you forget what her personal experience was. She came out to like two like encores kind of a thing. And then in this theater, it's a 3,000 seat theater in the round. And it's the kind of theater that there's only one way out. So it's like if you ever spoke there or performed there or anybody did anything there, it doesn't matter who you are. People are getting up in droves to leave because they want to beat the rest of the people leaving to get out of this venue. Long story short, she came out twice, and then the lights started to come on, and then she came out again with a little dog. I think the dog's name was Spike, if I remember. And she did this thing like where like stops. Everybody like stop and turn to the back where the the stage door was, and they're waiting for the next funny. And with the same amount of energy that she like entertained everybody for like the last 90 minutes, she said, whether it be the people that you came with or the people you're going home to, make sure you tell them that you love them. Because sometimes you don't get that chance. I know I didn't.
Wow. Wow.
And she took the energy of 3,000 people and just went like that. And I remember being grounded in a way and rooted in a way that was pretty powerful. I was already navigating my own sense of loss with my mom. And then the next day, I worked at a hospital. And the next day I went into, I was a phlebotomist, and I was doing pre-admission testing. It's where the patients came in for their surgery, testing their blood works beforehand. So they have their EKGs, their blood work, their x-ray in order to come in for their surgery 2 weeks later or a week later. So the woman who was the registrar, she saw that I was off, and she always had, her name was Kathy, and Kathy always had a very maternal energy towards me because she knew that my mom had passed. So she called me into her office and she goes, sit down. And I said, what's the matter? And she goes, I don't know. You tell me. You're a little off today. Are you okay? Are you missing your mom? And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm always missing my mom. I said, but I'm just really in my feelings today. And she said, okay, tell me why. And she had always, every time she would hang up the phone, she would say to her husband, I love you, Raj. I love you, Raj. I love you, Raj. And that day was no exception. So this moment was really powerful for me because we talked about what Joan had said. And as I was getting ready to leave that day, she came into my office where I drew blood, and she goes, hey, kiddo. And I went, what? And she said, Joanfully yours. And it became a thing between the two of us, Joanfully yours, which meant one day the phone's going to ring, the doorbell's going to answer, and life's going to be there. And you want to make sure that you're communicating with the people in your life. And it became such a powerful moment. And for years after that, every card that we exchanged would be Joanfully yours. And that Joanfully yours conversation, precipitated by Joan Rivers that night, literally got me within days to start telling people at my events and my groups, make sure you communicate, appreciate, and validate the people that are in your lives so you don't have to wait for somebody like me to do it. Because sometimes we don't get a second chance at that first opportunity.
Well, I love this. It's so impactful. And of course, I have to take this moment to express to you how much I appreciate you and how much good that you bring to the world. And one of the reasons I say that, John, is because one of the themes that frequently runs through your readings is forgiveness and the message that it's never too late to forgive. Why is forgiveness such a prominent element of your work?
So there's a card in the tarot called the devil. And if anybody looks at this card, right, they think right away, biblical devil. But to me, when I look at the card, the devil, it's got, the statue of what looks like this, dark figure, all gray. And then there's like an Adam and Eve, like a guy and a girl on both sides. And they've got themselves chained, right? So they're like loosely chained, connected to the statue. And I've always seen that as being, what are we negatively attached to or anchored to? And in reality with this card, they can very easily take off this chain, right? So I think that when we're holding on to negativity, when we're holding on to disappointment and anger, betrayal, when we held on to that, we are anchoring ourselves. We're putting that chain attached to that devilish kind of feeling, and it anchors us to the moment, and we can't move past it. So listen, there are a lot of people that I don't communicate with anymore because they've either hurt me, they've betrayed me, they've angered me, or whatever the case is, whatever that is. I have a very, very specific way I deal with it. I forgive it. I don't forget it. I may create a boundary there where I don't go back to it. And then I do something that people are shocked but when they hear me say this. I look for the fun of what that relationship once was. I look to what made me laugh. Why did I like them? And what was good about it? Like, what was the fun part of it? Even if that person betrayed me, even if that person did something negative to me, I will not choose to anchor myself to that lower vibration. So instead, I already know I'm done here. Like, that door is closed. We are done. Never is this happening again. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. But I'm going to reflect on our good times. And I'm going to reflect on the things that we laughed at. And I will share those. I might not say your name, but they're part of my history. Why would I give up part of my fun history because somebody else is negative? So it's just a philosophy that I have. People look at me like, and I'm like, try it. What do you have to lose? Take
It's
off the chain.
amazing. It's amazing to me that you said that, because in my past life as a family court judge, that is exactly what I used to say to the couples that were fighting in front of me over money or custody. I would say, try to focus on what was good about the relationship, what drew you to each other to begin with. So you've just validated me in a huge way. Thank you so much.
Well, listen, every person that comes into our lives that hurts us or betrays us or angers us, or by the way, that you hurt, that you betray, that you anger, right? Because it's, just people, humans, learning lessons, choices, some bad, some good. What is the lesson? Like, what are we supposed to learn from that? Because here's the bottom line. If you don't learn it, you're going to repeat it. It might not be with that person. It's going to be with somebody else. The universe is great at giving you a pop quiz going, oh, did you learn it there? No. All right, let's just put this in front of you and see if you learn it again. Oh, nope, failed it, back in school. Well, let's try again. And then any astrologer will tell you that there's patterns and cycles in the planets. They come in with lessons, the reflection of what we're supposed to learn. So it's kind of like all connected. So that's where my philosophy comes from.
I love it. I want to ask you about grief, which you've
Sure.
described as the other side of love.
Mm-hmm.
You've said that we should try to look for gratitude in our grief and to honor grief. Why is that important?
If we look for gratitude in the grief, that means we're looking for the lesson. It doesn't mean the grief goes away. So sometimes when people hear a teaching lesson or a tool to help somebody navigate, they think that we're abandoning the person that's passed. We're not abandoning that person. We're actually trying to get better connected to that person. And grief is the thing that acts like a fog that rolls in that we can't. So when we look for gratitude in our grief, then that means that we're looking for what is that positive thing that comes out of that moment, right? So for me, if my mom didn't pass, I wouldn't have been on the journey that I went on for all these years. I wouldn't have all those covers that are behind you, all the TV shows, none of that would have probably happened. And I'd probably be doing surgery in a hospital, or I'd be doing some type of healthcare kind of a thing, because that was healing and that was something that I went to school for. Like, that was my career was going to be. But I don't know if I would have become John Edward in that capacity. So that's where I look for my gratitude. Like, I found gratitude in the experience, hated it, still hate it. But
are you able to absorb the gratitude that the people you connect with, the people that you help, have for you?
Ooh, that's a tough one, Harvey. I have an old school kind of philosophy of this work. I've been better in the last decade, where you kind of get in, you do your work, and you get out, right? And then it's like you're done. So it's like almost like you're like a psychic ninja. You kind of like get in, do everything, and then you leave. You're not important. You're just the tool that's being used. You're that fulcrum moment in that person's life. So when someone says thank you to me, and it's an energetic thing, I have a lot of people go, oh my God, thank you so much, or I really appreciate that, or this is very, very helpful. I'm good. But then every now and again, there's that person, and it's like they know. I don't know. It's like a certain frequency that when they say thank you, it will render me emotionally speechless because they kind of found that place inside that I don't let people get to, and they get to. And not only does it happen on a like a personal level with readings professionally, but if I see it on TV, there are certain moments like I think that the two most powerful words that characters can say to each other, and whether they be characters in a movie, a TV show, a book, or characters in your life, right? Because we're all playing roles. When when that one character really understands what that other character did, experienced, learned, lost, and something came from that, and that one character says, "Thank you," and the way that done, like I will be like hot mess.
You see, I think that, for example, when I said thank you to you, what I was really saying to you is that you've healed me. You're a healer. That's really what I'm saying when I say thank you.
And I accept that and I appreciate that. And I kind of feel like we heal ourselves through the lessons and the teachings that come out. But thank you for saying it the way you said it. I appreciate that.
Now, John, you've talked a lot over the years about the process of seeing, hearing, and feeling that you go through when you're doing a reading. But what about the person for whom you're doing that reading? What process should they be going through in their mind during the reading?
So the first thing I tell people to do is before you go for any type of reading, whether it be a psychic reading, a mediumship reading, an astrology reading, you want to have a list of topics and specific questions that you want addressed before you even go, because that's basically putting out an invite to the universe to answer these questions. Hands down, that's the first thing you should do. You should also know your family's, in my world, you should know your family's first names, middle names. You should know their death dates, their birth dates. You should know what they passed from, because all those things are validating things that can come through. You should keep an open mind. You should be somewhat skeptical. You should question the process. Just because somebody says that they're a psychic or a medium doesn't mean they're good. Doesn't mean they're ethical. I've recently joined TikTok in the last, since the pandemic started, and some of the stuff that I see on TikTok, and there are people on there who have like, I don't know, millions of followers, and they are kind of like, I would not want to put any person in front of them. I don't feel like they're coming with the right intention. They're coming from a place of ego, and they're not coming from a place of healing, but they mask it as if they are. So that kind of makes me feel like, So I like to protect my clients. And the way I do that is by say, be skeptical. Just because somebody's on TV, just because somebody wrote a book, just because somebody goes on the radio, doesn't mean that they're any better than somebody who chooses not to do that. And I would say it all the time on Crossing Over. I'd be like, right now, there are so many people that would never write a book, would never stand up in front of an audience, would never go on television, has no interest in doing group work. They just see their clients one-on-one because that's their purpose. And they're really, really good. I go, so I don't just stand in front of this camera for me. I stand in front of this camera for the work. So with that being said, you also need to be careful because there are some scammy people out there. I have over I have hundreds of people have fake accounts in my name trying to be me. And then they direct message other people saying that they got pulled to them. They've got a message for them. And it's really creepy. Like, it's disgusting. And people will then respond to me like, was that you? And I'm like, I literally say right in my bios, I will never direct message you. It's never gonna happen. But people want to believe that the power of love is so strong that it stopped that psychic in the middle of the airport. It stopped that psychic in the middle of the parking lot. It stopped that psychic in the middle of the supermarket. I'm like, all of that is unethical. It's never okay to enter someone's vibration without their permission. And I make people laugh when I talk about it in public, and I'll say stuff like, what if I was a dentist and I'm walking through the cereal aisle and I happen to see inside your mouth and you've got an abscess? Would you want me to walk over to you and be like, excuse me, I'm a dentist, in with my finger into your mouth, and right here you have an abscess? You would be completely flipping out if I did that to you. It would be a violation of you physically. Well, in my world, when somebody walks up to another individual and starts giving them information that they did not ask for, it is that same violation metaphysically. And it's not okay to do that. And it runs rampant in this field because people think it's okay. And it's really showy. And then people could be performative. or when you see somebody do a reading and they like perform the reading and get emotional, that that irritates me like beyond words, like to the point that it makes me like I have a hard time not saying something.
Well, I think that's because you don't really see yourself as being in show business. You're
No,
not,
oh my
and
god, oh my
you're
god, no.
not, and you had a TV show. You are a celebrity. Let's face it, and you're extremely well known. But you're not an entertainer. You're not in
No,
show business.
no. And like my daughter is. My daughter is an actress. My daughter has, been very successful. She was on a TV show for 5 years. She was on multiple TV shows. She did something, off Broadway. Like that's her trajectory. That's what she wants to do. And I remember when she was like 3 years old and she had done a commercial for a local utility company. And we were driving in the car and she said, "Oh, I hope I hear my commercial." And I went, "Why? Do you think they changed it?" And she goes, "No." I go, "Did they play it for you? Like, did you get a copy of it?" And she went, "Yeah." I go, "Did you hear it?" And she went, "Yeah." I said, "So then you heard it, you remember it, you have a copy of it. Why do you want to hear it on the radio?" And I was driving and she went, "Oh, I don't know." She said, "Because then I would be like famous." And I literally whipped my head around and said, "You will never be," and I did say, "effing famous as long as there is breath in this body." And she kind of like, she's really young. She like looked at me. I go, "No, no, no on the fame." I go, "Fame is fleeting. Fame comes, fame goes. You work to be accomplished." I said, "Because your accomplishments are yours. Fame is for everybody else, but accomplishments are yours. So you work for the accomplishment because then that can never be taken away. I may never write another book in this lifetime again, but those books that are behind you, those are my accomplishments. Like I did that and they don't go away, right? So every reading I do is an accomplishment. It doesn't matter if there's a camera on me or not. I work towards being accurate. I don't have to be right. I got to be accurate. I work towards being accomplished, not famous. A lot of
Yeah, I
people,
love that because you're letting your work speak for itself.
100%.
I want to ask you about energy and
Sure.
specifically the energy that radiates from some people. Do you believe, John, that there are some people who naturally emit a healing energy? And I ask you this selfishly because I've been told so many times in my life that I'm transmitting this kind of healing energy, and I'm wondering if I'm getting help from the spirit world to do that. Are there people that do emit that kind of healing energy?
I think we all have the ability to emit frequencies. And I think when we program those frequencies with intention, then that's what gets emitted. So that's a compliment to you, Harvey, that people are telling you that because that means that you're programming your frequency. Your intentions is to raise vibration, to heal people, to help people, and to better others. So with you doing that, people are resonating with that. And that's why they're responding to you in that way. So yeah, I know that to be true as well. It's kind of like a radio station. What you broadcast out is what you attract in.
But what if you don't know that you're doing it? What if it isn't your intention to help people or heal them? What if it's just you're being yourself?
Then that's a compliment to who you are as a person.
Well, that's very helpful. I really appreciated your book, Infinite Quest, because you explain how we can develop our intuition and tap into our own psychic wisdom and connect with our spirit guides. Do you get help from your spirit guides in writing your books?
Oh, I'm laughing because I kind of feel like I always want to be like, yeah, like Fallen Masters. Yeah, I feel like I watched a movie and then wrote that. What If God Were the Sun was downloaded to me on a plane. So like those two are fictional. There was another one, Final Beginnings. That one was also a download. So it's kind of like, how do I retell the story that they just told me? Like it's like I just went to go watch a movie, and now I know this movie. Now, how do I write the screenplay for the movie that I just watched? That's what I feel like my fictional stuff is. And then the non-fictional stuff, they definitely are involved in as well. So yeah, I kind of feel like they should be like co-authors, like with the guides, because it's where I'm at in my life and what I'm learning and what I needed to teach. And with Infinite Quest, I jokingly say that book is it's to develop your psychic abilities to take charge of your life, right? But really, the subtext of that is it's the how to develop your psychic abilities, even though I'm telling you in the book, don't go do readings. You're probably going to ignore me and try to go do a reading. So if you're going to go do readings, make sure you're paying attention to how to protect your energy in this kind of way book. Like that's the book that I feel like that's what people use.
Yeah, I love that book. Another thing about Infinite Quest that really resonated with me is your concept of psychic self-defense and protecting ourselves from energy vampires who can drain us dry. Given the enormous number of people you connect with in your work and the demands on your time and energy by so many people, John, how do you protect yourself from toxic energy?
Boundaries. It's really, really simple. You have to create boundaries and then be the person that others don't expect you to be. Society expects us to be a certain way, right? So society expects us like, you have to do that, right? So, I was raised in a very Italian family, my mom's side, and certain things after my mom passed, my grandmother would say, because my mom's mom survived her, and she would say, well, your mom's not here. You have to do that. And I'd be like, no. And she'd be like, what do you mean no? I'm like, I love you, but no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this. So I am that person where I set a lot of boundaries. I'm really good at setting boundaries. Like if I feel like someone is kind of too energetically dependent, I'm like, nope, nope. Boundaries are very, very important. And then some people are very good at energetic tentacles, like they kind of like come through. I'm like with a Star Wars lightsaber. I'm like, I'm like, no, no, no. So I protect my energy in a very, very big way. And I always use the scene from the movie Bridesmaids. Did you see that movie?
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, when the actual bridesmaids, whatever party is happening, the villain of the story steals Kristen Wiig's ideas and runs with it. And at the end, the person that's getting married is just so appreciative of this whole Parisian theme, right? That whole thing that's happening. And everybody expects that Kristen Wiig's character is going to be like, it's okay, don't ruin the bride's day, until she tackles the other girl to the ground. And it was like, that's not okay. And that moment to me is who I am. Except I just don't tackle people to the ground physically, clearly, but I will say the stuff energetically that people don't expect to state what my boundaries are. Like, don't do that. Like, that's not okay. And I'll do that in readings with people. Like when somebody's coming at me, somebody came to me for a private reading, and let's go back a bit. And she said, she sat in front of me. Now I have never met this woman. She was on my waiting list. She sat in front of me and she literally went like this. She was like, and I just was like, you okay? And she goes, yeah. I went, okay. Yeah, just relax. I gave her my big explanation, and I kind of did my thing. I would do with every client. You have any questions? And she was like, no. I was like, okay. And then I started the reading. And it was like everything that came out of my mouth, no, no, no. And I just politely said, okay. I said, we're done. And she looked at me because it was like 6 minutes into the reading. She was like, what? She's like, I waited 7 years for this. I go, well, then I would advise you to act like you waited 7 years for this. I go, because all of this, whatever you got going on here, I go, I don't want to be in this. I'm not swimming in this. I go, so I have to dive into your energy in order to do this. I go, and I ain't diving into this. I go, so if you'd like to go sit out in the waiting room and kind of debrief and clear yourself and whatever, you can come back in. I go, but this is not happening. And to her credit, she did. She shifted her energy and she had a great session. But do I already know not to take that personally? 100%. Do I already know that she didn't want to sit with me because I represent the person that she lost in that moment? 100%. So why would I take that offensively? So for me, my tactic is to break down that energy by creating a boundary of my own. So it's just kind of and sometimes I'll do it in a way that people are I'll shock on purpose. I will completely say something to make them come out of that moment what did you just say? It's a complete tactic to get them to kind of drop their altitude a little bit, find a less turbulent energy for them to meet me in a place where I could read for them. And it's funny because sometimes other people in the group will, they'll laugh at it, or somebody that I work with, or my wife will be like, this is why I can't come to your events. She's like, I can't believe you say the stuff that you say. I'm like, I'm just direct. I'm Libra. I'm blunt. I'm to the point. It's like, you come at me, I meet your energy.
Well, I think it's very refreshing, and it's authenticity at its best. Now, you've said many times that there are no coincidences. So how much of our lives are predetermined, and how much is our own free will to create the life we want?
So I do not believe that everything is very Calvinistic in thought, that everything's predestined. I believe that we have moments in our lives that are fated or destiny, call them life check-in points. And I think that we have a blueprint for the opportunities to learn the lessons that we come into. What's the buzzword now that people use? Soul contracts. I'm not really sure, but some of these the rephrasing of things. But basically, when you're born, you have a natal chart. Any astrologer could look at your blueprint for your life, right? That's called your natal chart, your birth chart. You would need to tell them your birth time, your birth location, and the day and year. And then they do where your planets are. And it's got this 12 house system that they look at, and they can kind of talk about who you are as a person and go deep on that personality and kind of how you are. And then everything's always moving, so they can kind of look and see what's happening now, what's coming up for you. So I use the example of, if there's a block of homes, and on this one street, the same builder built all the same houses, right? And you imagine that every house is a different minute of the same day of the same location, right? So there's similarities now in the houses because of where the house was, quote unquote, built or born structurally. But how a person decorates that house, what kind of furniture goes into the house, the colors that they put on the walls, how they live inside that house, how they utilize that house, that's all up to that person's individual, the person who lives there. So I do believe in free will.
So when we're faced with major decisions in our lives, should we be asking our spirit guides for help?
I think we should be utilizing our spirit guides every single day. Personally, I think we should acknowledge them. You could refer to them as your team. A lot of people think that they're loved ones and friends who have crossed. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that they're highly evolved energies and more higher evolved than grandma, and that we should just tap into them and just be like, hey, I'm told that I have a team. I want to work with you. I want you guys to, I always say that we have to protect our energy, right? Energetically, we want to protect ourselves, because you want to make sure that you're dealing with only the most high vibrational things, right? There's positive energy and negative energy in the world, just period. You can look around and see that. So you pull your team in. And an example that I would use when I was a kid doing readings, I would imagine that my guides were like helium balloons that were kind of tethered to me. And then when it was time to read, I would just pull the strings down and the balloons would come closer. And then when the readings were over, I would let the strings go and the balloons would go back. So it was just an exercise that I would use to, like, I'm pulling them in and then I'm kind of releasing them. But yeah, use your team to kind of like, and then you pay attention to what it is that you're thinking and what is it you're feeling. The hard part is remaining objective. The hard part is making sure that you're not reading into something in the way that you want something, or reading into something the way that you don't want something. So objectivity is really important.
Now, we've been talking about such serious phenomena, but I really love that you have a sense of humor about what you do. I can't resist asking you about the cameo appearance that you made on Will&Grace in 2004. Did you have fun working with the cast of the show?
So that was a very, very surreal experience. And that was a very big stepping out of the box moment. So the way that happened, during an episode of Crossing Over, I got information about someone having an issue with their bra, and some issue with their bra and being wet or stained with something water related. And the person had said, like, no. And I'm like, no, I'm seeing the episode of Will&Grace where there was like a water bra and there was a leak, blah, blah. Well, the writer of that episode, a woman by the name of Joni Marchenko, saw that. And she was like, oh my God, you have to come on the show and make a cameo. I'm like, I can't do that. She's like, why not? I'm like, I can't act. I'm like, I cannot act. I assure you I cannot act. She's like, no. So we had talked like once or twice about it. And then when Crossing Over came to an end, it came up again. And I thought, why not? I'm going to mark the ending of Crossing Over by doing something completely like out of character, literally for me. So she said, would you do it? And I was like, yeah, but I really can't act. She goes, no worries. What are you doing right now? I said, I'm getting ready to go on a book tour for my book, Afterlife. And she goes, great. Tell me what happens at your book signings. I go, somebody walks up to me and says, I say to them, who do I make this out to? And she goes, that's it. And I go, yep. I go, I sign it and off they go. Great. She came back with that exact scenario. She put me in a book signing with my books behind me, and they put the characters in front of me. And some of that was ad-libbed, and it was a really off the wall experience. It was a great experience. It was an off the wall experience. The cast was really nice, really, really, really nice. Megan Mullally is hysterical, and she was very, very sweet. Sean Hayes was a great guy. He had no idea who I was, and he met me without knowing who I was. Thought I might have been like an extra on the show in some peripheral kind of way. Stopped me, thanked me for being there, was very, very gracious. Was really, 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 honestly, just a great energy to have met. Deborah Messing was really, really pregnant. So she was kind of like in her own kind of way. And I didn't really talk to the actor, Eric McCormick, but it was a really wild experience. And what I remember the most from that was there was rehearsals during the day, and then I'm sitting at the table, and then everybody left, but nobody said you're done, you can get up and go. And out of the darkness was the director's voice. And he said, you're really good at what you do. And I said, thank you. And then there was this really pregnant pause, and he goes, because you sure as shit can't act. And I just was like, thank you.
Well, I loved that episode. I thought you were fabulous. It was so entertaining.
Thank you. It's kind of funny when it comes up.
Now, for a long time during the pandemic, you were connecting with your audience virtually, but now you're returning to doing live appearances as well as virtual appearances. Do you find a difference in your receptivity when you're doing virtual readings versus in-person readings?
No, they're the same. It's all the same, whether I'm in person or if I'm doing virtual or just over the phone. It's energy. So I'm tapping into the energy of it. It's exactly the same for me.
I want to tell our viewers that you can get all the information about John Edward and find out everything that's happening, including his tour schedule, by going to his website, johnedward.net. Well, John, as you know, there are no accidents, and I have absolutely no doubt that we were meant to connect at this time in this way. I'm very, very fortunate to feel the presence of spirit guides around me almost always, and I owe a lot of that to you because you've taught me so much over the years through your books, lectures, and readings. I know how incredibly busy you are, and I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to appear on our show.
This is a great, great interview. I loved being here. And anybody else that's watching, thank you for watching. And anybody that's considering being a guest, here's my testimonial. Come on Harvey show. This is an amazing experience. Harvey, thank you so much.
Oh, that means the world to me. Thank you, John. Our guest has been the renowned psychic medium, author, and educator, John Edward. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.